Have you ever met somebody and within 5 minutes, you're like, this is a winner? And maybe it's at a worship meetup, maybe it's at a dinner party, maybe it's in a job interview, but you're just like, there's something unusually special about this person. I feel really sorry for the really great worship leader who sort of ages out of the job. Let's be blunt, it happens. So what do you do when you're 50 or whatever the number is? You're super good at what you do, but it's time to find your replacement. How do you stand out of that crowd? And so the easy way to stand out in the crowd is just to get back to people. The book has quite a bit of data showing not just our surveys, but like industry norms and how this is just the lowest hanging fruit there is.
William, welcome to the Churchfront Worship and Tech podcast.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you having me here.
Anytime. Glad to have you. You've been on the show before, but it's been a while. It's probably been, it's at least been within the past multiple years. So I want to definitely give a little bit of an introduction to our audience for who you are, what you do, what you're up to these days. So why don't you give a brief introduction here?
I'll try and be brief. I am a recovering preacher, so it can go long. But, served straight, went undergrad, grad, straight into serving churches locally. And so never was really in the business world. And after leading churches for 15 years, stepped aside and went into the business world. And that's a whole nother podcast if you want to hear the, story behind the story, what have you. But the long and short it was, I went from being senior pastor of really one of the finest churches I've ever met. Amazing people, First Presbyterian in Houston, which is where Sam Houston went to church. And from a tech standpoint, pretty amazing church. First church on the radio in the state of Texas. First church on television in the state of Texas. I mean, it was just like first. Great people. Should be an easy place to talk somebody into coming and being pastor. It took them 3 years to find me. And that's how scarce the talent was at the time, because it wasn't like I'm some magic find. But 3 years. I was there 6 years. Went through a divorce, which by the way, I would not recommend. Put that in the show notes. But found myself a single dad with 4 kids, and so went into the corporate world and went to work. I'm in Houston, so Houston's all about dead dinosaurs. Went into oil and gas and Fortune 200 company, and I went in. It's like kind of a management training thing, so like rotate through departments kind of thing. And my first year was in the HR department. They're like, people, we can teach you oil and gas, so start with people. During that year, the CEO said, I've been here 9 years now, which I didn't know, but that's a lifetime for a company that size. It's usually like 3.5 years. So he said, we need to find my successor. And they hired this thing called a search firm. Well, I'd never heard of anything like that. But I was kind of like water boy to the team, like literally no real value, but maybe he can do something. And 90 days after they hired that search firm, they had their new CEO. And he ended up staying 10 years. Now, I didn't know that then, but I'm just like, wow. And First Pres, after I left, took 3 years to find my successor. And it's a great church. And, granted, when pastor leaves with a divorce, there's a little bit of bumpiness, but it's a way bigger church than me. So, and everybody thought that was normal. 3 years. So you got like a 12-year span at one of the best churches in the country. They've got a pastor for 6 years. They're looking for 6 years.
Wow.
And then you've got an oil and gas company, which depending on your, we don't feel this way in all of Texas, but I think most of America is convinced that oil and gas is the Death Star of the galaxy. And so here I am working for the evil empire. And in 90 days, they've got a new CEO. And I'm like looking at this 12-year run. It's half looking, half not for a great church, 90 days for the Death Star to find a new general, whatever his name was. And I'm just like, I can say this part in hindsight. I wouldn't have been able to sit there, but I'm like, why does the business world have a better solution than the bride? And I came home, and Adrian and I had just gotten married. I've fast forwarded through a lot of our story, but we had 6 kids. We blended our family, Brady Bunch sort of thing. and they're all in the house. We bought a new house, and I come home and say, babe, I think I'm supposed to quit my job and start something new for churches. And she just looked at me, Luke, total deadpan, and said, that's because churches love new ideas, right?
That's good. That's good. That's
So,
wisdom.
honestly, starting the company, the credit should go to her, because she should have said, I love your vision and your dreams and all that. Go back to work. We have 6 kids to feed.
Yeah, that's right.
But instead, she said, well, let's give it a try. And it was the fall of 2008, which, if you know your history, that was a really brilliant time to quit your job. Um,
Wow.
yeah, it was so stupid. It was so stupid. Only God could have made it work.
I don't think I knew that you guys started in that season. That is a huge testament to how the company has developed and come over time. So kudos to you guys. That's incredible.
No. It's actually kudos to God for being in charge.
Yeah.
Because, if we, do you know the book Outliers?
Yeah.
Fantastic book, right?
Yeah.
People be in right place, right time. And whether it's the Beatles or Motown or the Garment District of New York, it's an awesome book. If we last and prove to be a long-standing company, I really think we ought to be an appendix, because I didn't know this going in. I just had an idea in the business world and the bride, blah, blah, blah. Little did I factor that, denominations are falling apart. That's where people used to lean into to help find their pastoral staff.
Right.
Completeness. Rise of the non-denominational church, Willow, Saddleback, all the churches that came after that. And they're getting older, and you got baby boomers aging. Also, the same month we started was the month that Twitter launched. It was 2 months after Facebook was available to the public. And I could give you 1,000 reasons why it was right place, right time. And I really kind of think God had us start during a recession so we could learn the craft, so that when things bounce back, we would actually know what we were doing, and not just like, oh, sure, we started a company. So we had we grew every year except for that one little 2020 thing.
Yeah.
It grown every year. But it was those early years where we got to hone the craft a little bit and learn from some of the best that made it possible for this thing to go. And I can't take any credit for it. It was right place, God's time. How's that?
Yep. I love it. And tell the audience, what does the Vanderbloemen group do? What do you guys? What's the service you guys provide?
Yeah. So we started out saying, I wonder if we could help churches find their pastor. Okay. Now, there's a long road to that, and it starts with, how about you find our assistant pre-K director, at our 17th campus, like that. That's where it started. So we kind of learned all kinds of things. Wow, we had to learn about churches that were in neighborhoods with massive ethnic transition, and they needed to have a staff that matched the new reality of their neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And we had to learn, what is the difference? How do you do a search for, we really need a Latino? Well, I didn't know even what kind of Latino. In Western Michigan, where you've got a large agrarian Latino population, you need a Mexican or something like that. In South Miami, in the very affluent district, you could do a lot of things, but a Cuban works amazingly. So we had to learn that. We had to learn tech. We got hired. Luke, we got hired. Oh gosh, this was early. I shouldn't tell this story. I won't out the church, because they really shouldn't have hired us. It was a good sized church, probably 3,000 or 4,000 on the weekend, something like that. And somebody convinced the pastor to buy them some Mac Daddy soundboard.
Love it.
It was not I had to research soundboards. I don't know soundboards. I mean, I'm a musician, but and it was there were 5 in use in the United States at the time. And they wanted us to find the guy who could run that. Our office is about a driver and maybe a lob wedge to Lakewood. I talked to the sound guys at Lakewood. They have a pretty good soundboard. Yeah. And they're oh, we don't have that one. So we had to learn all kinds of pieces other than just the pastor. So what do? We help churches find all of their full-time staff.
Yeah.
And usually staff that are higher up on the org chart. So it'd be the head of the worship tech arts, not just the part-time sound engineer or that sort of thing. And we also do We have cultural studies and consulting around that. We do compensation analysis. We help teams. But the main thing is we try and find the right leader for teams that are on Team Jesus,
Yeah.
so that the church can go farther and faster.
That's good. That's good.
Before we continue on with the video, a quick word from our sponsor, the Worship Ministry School Accelerator Program. You may not know this, but in addition to all the YouTube content we're creating here at Churchfront, we also partner with local church worship and production ministries to help them hit their ministry goals. Over the past 4 years, we've worked personally with hundreds of worship ministries around the globe. We've helped churches navigate upgrading their worship tech, building better systems to grow their team of volunteers, as well as address any knowledge or skill gaps required for modern day worship ministry. When you join the Accelerator program, you get access to our entire library of online, on-demand courses, and you get unlimited access to our team of Churchfront coaches. To learn more about joining the program, click the link below this video to apply and schedule your free strategy session today. Now let's get back to the video.
Well, and you guys have been doing that for, like you said, since 2008. And then recently, I'd love to dive into the study that you just did, and ultimately that resulted in a book that's coming out, will be coming out at the time of the podcast. But tell us about what led to the project. What made you kind of, step into a season of research and development and kind of honing in all of that information?
It's a great question, because we have grown very fast. God's blessed us for many years in a row. And, if you're working in the business, it's hard to work on the business. Like if you're busy in the middle of Christmas or Easter, it's hard to drop back and hone in, how we're doing what we're doing. So what started the research project? This thing called COVID-19. Because, if you could see right behind me, I've got an undergraduate degree from Wake Forest in religion and philosophy. And Luke, do you know, it's interesting, do you know what the vast majority of philosophy majors spend their career doing?
No, curious.
Yeah, they spend their career saying, would you like fries with that? So,
Watch out.
Not a business degree, right?
Yeah.
And Princeton Seminary, yay, but not a business degree. I learned a business lesson in 2020. In 2020, all of our clients shut down indefinitely.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a business lesson. If all of your clients shut down indefinitely, it will affect your P&L.
Yes.
So
100%.
We had to reorg. We were fortunate. We early on got some advice to figure out how long you think this is going to last and build accordingly. We took the long view. We cut 40% of our overhead in one day. Wow. After researching why. Yeah, and that's people. I mean, we don't produce stuff. It was awful. Yeah. And if I were a pure businessman and not interested in anything other than the bottom line, I would have just shut the place down and reopened when we got through this thing. But we decided, let's cut to the bone. How far can we cut to get to a team we can keep for a year and a half if this whole thing takes that long? And I said, here's the vision: serve, don't sell. We're just going to find ways to serve people. And if we die serving.
Wow.
That's all. And God really, smiled on us. We ended up being kind of the go-to resource for churches to get their PPP money. In your world, all of a sudden you had my mother's church, which is, I don't know, it's founded somewhere well before the Civil War. And it's a beautiful little First Presbyterian church in a small town in Western North Carolina. Like the carpet's blood red of Jesus and the columns are beautiful white. And you get the picture, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden they're streaming online. Mm-hmm. And the pastor's got his 12-year-old holding a Canon and they didn't know what to do. So we invited people like you onto our platform, which kind of took off during the pandemic, and said, teach us how to do this. So we just kind of became a resource center, but that didn't take all day. So the rest of the day was like, well, we got time to study. And we realized when we do a search, So you hire me to find your guy that can run the amazing soundboard. Maybe there are 1,000 people interested. There are probably only 3 people that can actually run it. But like, you funnel down, you do phone calls, we've done Zoom since Zoom started, and you get down, down, down. When you get down to the cream of the crop, where I'm gonna bring you maybe 5 candidates that I think are the short list. To get to that 5, there are probably 8 or 9 face-to-face interviews that are long format, and we do them sort of in the same way, not cookie cutter, but general rhythms are the same. So during the pandemic, we realized we have now done 30,000 of those face-to-face interviews, and we've tracked their data.
Yeah.
Like, where are they working? How are they doing? How did they score? Like, all that. And so we started asking the question. The first question was, have you ever met somebody and within 5 minutes you're like, this is a winner? And maybe it's at a worship meetup, maybe it's at a dinner party, maybe it's in a job interview, but you're just like, there's something unusually special about this person. I've always wondered, what is that? Why in 5? I'm not dumb. Why in 5 minutes am I all interested in you and want to be in your fan club? Like, that was really the question.
Yeah.
Could you figure out what that alchemy is and bottle it?
Yep.
And so we've got these 30,000 interviews, and we said, could we figure out who the best of those 30,000 are? And the answer is yes. And then we said, do they have anything in common? And the answer was yes, yes. And it was nothing I thought it would be. Total surprise. I thought it would be, they all have an IQ of 170, right? The best of the best of the best. They all have pedigrees, like they all went to Ivy League schools, or they're all 6 feet tall and have amazing hair and teeth, something, well, none of that. And we're talking about like janitors to senior leaders across economic strata, across geographic strata. 12 habits showed up that these best of the best all seem to exhibit. And more importantly, it's 12 habits that they commonly perform that the rest of the population does not at all. And they're not hard habits to execute. So that led us to, okay, let's try and do this so we can learn to do our job better. And as we told people about it, they're like, you got to turn it into a book. You got to help people get better. And then we saw this whole AI thing coming and great resignation. I mean, like, the job market is a total train wreck right now, and it's only going to get worse. So if we can put this out there and it gives people a chance to get ahead or stand out, that's a big win.
Yep. Yeah, and I know for the people that we've talked to, like, especially in ministry right now, and I know the job market is hard everywhere, but there are some people who feel stuck because they know the ministry role is not the right fit, but they are terrified to leave because of how hard it is out there, and the options out there and the opportunity to make a living doing vocational ministry I think have decreased since maybe 5-10 years back. But
and in your world, you're not gonna ever invite me back after I say this, so just delete it out. So in your world, you know what I've not wanted to be like, and I don't mean this is discriminatory or anything like that, but like, I feel really sorry for the really great worship leader who sort of ages out of the job.
Yeah, 100%.
And let's be blunt, like, it happens
all the time.
So what do you do when you're 50 or whatever the number is? You're super good at what you do, but it's time to find your replacement. And now you got to go. How do you stand out of that crowd?
Yeah.
And hopefully the book will help people say, okay, I can apply these 12 habits and I will stand out of the crowd and be one of those top 1% people.
Yeah. We need to do a podcast on that, because that is something that I would say 99% of worship leaders come into the job as a 20, 21-year-old, and they never are thinking about what that would be like if they were 50 in that role. And I know a couple worship pastor turned executive pastors, who have
Yep.
kind of done the journey a little bit and climbed the ladder, if you will, just transitioned into a different season of ministry. But they're few and far between. The majority of
Takes
the guys I know, they transition to something random,
it takes some planning.
Yeah.
It does. That'd be a cool podcast. Maybe another
Yeah.
time.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll talk about it offline. I want to hear your opinion. You mentioned something in some of your briefings about the book that one of the traits that you found the least common in the survey or the data that you saw, and it's speed or, kind of time of reactiveness. There's a lot of language that you use in there, but talk to me about why you think that is and what that looked like in your data.
Because we're broken sinners and we're terrible at getting back to people. How's that?
Short and sweet.
No, really. I mean, so this kind of the reason I love this particular habit is I just sort of fell into it. We started the company, 6 kids, brand new idea for churches. Oh, churches love new ideas. I'm pretty hungry, right? So if you called me or emailed me and said, William, could we talk about you helping me find a new worship leader? I got back to you immediate. And I just did it out of desperation, but I kind of kept doing it. I might be like a little dysfunctional with my responsiveness, but I kept getting comments from people that hire us you have no idea how uncommon it is that you got right back to us. And so we sort of built our team around, it's actually one of our cultural values is ridiculous responsiveness. And I'd always assumed that it was uncommon, but when we started mining into the data, most people don't respond quickly. After we did our study of the 30,000, we expanded and surveyed 250,000 people around these 12 habits. We found least common. People don't get back. In fact, it's hilarious. So this is all about response time. Do you actually get back to people when you say you will? Okay. So something I'm going to get it wrong, but somewhere in the ballpark, let's call it, of 91% of the 250,000 people who responded, 91% said they're above average in response time. Now, I'm not a mathematician, but
That can't be right.
No, 91% of people are not above average anything. Average is 50%.
Yes.
Yeah. So it gets better. So we worked with SurveyMonkey to kind of get the thing done, and we got to know their people, and we hired some pros to help run the thing. And we're so just for kicks, what have you've done more surveys than anybody on the planet. What's the average response time for your surveys? They said, well, I would say the bulk of your responses, 80% or so, will come in the first 4 days. All right. So those 91%, their average response time to the survey, 7 days.
Wow.
People don't get back to people. And the unicorns do.
Yeah.
They're just, I don't know if you've ever, maybe it's with Chick-fil-A or some service corporation where Southwest Airlines, I complained and immediately they were back to me and they gave me a solution and you're just blown away by it. That's because nobody gets back to anybody. Wow. And so the easy way to stand out in the crowd is just to get back to people. And the book has quite a bit of data showing not just our surveys, but industry norms and how this is just the lowest hanging fruit there is. And frankly, no offense to you or your audience, I've been a senior pastor and I'm one of those guys. Okay, can we do true confessions?
Let's do it.
Okay. I actually was that's right. The Lord sent the choir into battle first. That's exactly right. That's where they should have gone. Send them in first, wipe them out because they never freaking get back to me. Now, I did figure out that if I emailed my worship leader at 1:30 in the morning, I'd get an immediate response, but the rest of the world was asleep. So I think in your particular sector of worship and tech, you guys get a bad rap for not getting back to people or keeping odd hours or whatever. You want to rise to the top? That's all you got to do. Just get back to people. Sorry if that's a little too close or too soon.
No, we're all about growth here. So if you can call out a shortcoming or an area of weakness, I think it's an opportunity for growth.
Let's call it a perceived headache.
Yes, that's right. My question is, why do you think that is such a big hang up for ministry leaders? Why do you think something as simple as responding to your email, responding to a text message, doing your job on time. What's the deal? Like, why would it be such a big issue?
I'm really not being trite when I say it's a broken world, and we don't function like we should.
Yeah.
We put things, another of the 12 traits was self-awareness. Can you own, do you know, out of the 30,000 interviews of the best, we went and said, like, how many of those people told us about a time they got fired and it was their fault? And it was really, really low.
Yeah.
So you say, why are we like that? Well, walk back to the Garden of Eden. Why in the world did you eat that piece of fruit I told you not to? Well, the woman, the one you gave me, she made me do it. Hey, Eve, why'd you do it? Well, the snake, the one you created, he made me do it. Like, we're just broken. And if you can find these 12 areas it's not rocket science. This is not a 400-page book on how to cure cancer. This is simple 12 habits backed by data that if you will work on those and just get better at them a little bit, you will stand out in the crowd.
Yeah. Yeah. And the language you use, at least in the introduction and some of the again, briefing material is soft skills, right? It's not,
Right.
And there's a reason they call them soft skills, right? They're not hard skills. They're just part of being a good contributing member of society, contributing member of your church, whatever it might be to your family. But the unicorn is really where you are focusing on saying, these are the cream of the crop. They have all of these skills. So I'm curious how you got it to 12, because there are 12 soft skills that you talk about in the book.
Yeah.
And so what kind of brought it down to that number?
Yeah. And, some of them feed into each other. So maybe we could have boiled it down to 9. I really wanted an odd number. Odd numbers, actually, if you're writing a book, odd numbers sell better than even numbers. The 7 habits of highly effective people. Like in art, the triangle is always more interesting than a square,
Yeah.
But this was after 12, there was a big fall off. And we as a team developed the list. So it wasn't like William's opinion of the, qualities we're looking for. If you read some of them do feed into one another, but it was the most distinct list. And then after that, there was a fall off where some of them displayed this, but not this. And obviously, some are better at some things than others. So it's not like everybody scored 100 all the way across. So we even, I kind of geek out on things. So once we'd done all that, we said, okay, let's survey 250,000 people. And then we said, I wonder if we could build a tool like an Enneagram that would show people where they rank in each of those 12 against the general population and against the unicorns, and so that they could have a development plan. And so we did. It's called the Vander Index. I think it's actually live right now. And you can do it individually just to see what you are best at. You can also do it as a 360 for personnel reviews.
Sweet.
It's pretty sweet. You can do it as a team to see where are we strong as a team, and what if we just polished on this habit, we would stand out as a church. It's pretty cool.
That is legit. What a cool tool and resource to be able to, because I think that's the limitation of a lot of assessments, is that it's pretty individual. But if you could do it with your team or as a staff, and what an opportunity to really dive deep in the weeds there. That's pretty cool.
We just decided, kind of like we'll die serving. We're going to die with our boots on this. We went ahead and rolled the dice big. We felt like it's not like inventing the wheel, but it's like, hey, there are lots of books out there about the irrefutable this and the must do's that, but this actually is backed by quite a bit of data.
Yeah.
And Luke, if you're 50 and you're entering the job market, did you know this is the first time in U.S. history when there are 5 different generations in the workforce at the same time? And there's this sixth generation that no one wants to talk about called AI. And so it is as crowded as it's ever been out there, and you got to do something to stand out.
So I'd love to talk to you about that, because the AI conversation. So with AI, what I'm hearing a lot of, and I don't dive too deep in the weeds, but what I'm hearing a lot of is your skills that you're learning actually need to be focused around leveraging AI to help businesses develop AI to help streamline their systems. And so it's almost, I don't know what kind of an image I get, but the AI kind of removes the need for people, but you need people to learn how to develop the tools the AI does. But my question is, the book focuses so much on soft skills. How are you kind of holding those two things in tandem of be ready for AI and kind of, learn how to use it in your job area or your market, but also focus on the people skills that set you apart as a unicorn? Like, talk to me about that dichotomy there.
That's such a great tension to hone in on. I do think, we're getting ready to have our company on site, or our rally that we do twice a year, and I'm giving vision for next year. And every single department better come back to me with new initiatives leveraging AI by the end of the year. Like that's kind of where we're going. So there is that piece. But the flip side is, people get all nervous. Like the low number I'm seeing is 40% of jobs in the U.S. are going to radically shift in the next 10 years because of AI. And people get nervous and, I'd rather be a Luddite. I don't want to do tech, that sort of thing. And this is nothing new. We invent the steam engine, commerce changes. Rome builds roads. All of a sudden, there's a whole new interstate commerce, right? Printing press, you name it. There's always been a rhythm of we invent tech that creates efficiencies. It takes away some human jobs. It creates more human jobs.
Yeah.
So, the alternative is we're in the prequel to the Terminator right now. And if that's where we are, then we're all toast anyway. So why plan for that? So, well, really, okay, it's been fun.
Yep. That's good.
But I'm going to bank that that's not where we're living.
Yeah.
And what I believe is, and I'll give you a why behind the what I believe. I believe the premium for us in the next 10 years in the workplace is being the best human you can be. And I mean, like doing things that computers cannot do, like responsiveness. Okay, humans are terrible at it. AI is pretty incredible at it. So it's going to have to change from get back to people to get back to people with an intentional, well thought through response in short order, because they're going to be so tired of hearing from bots and so tired of hearing from AI. But if you can say, hey, William, so glad you're on the podcast. So sorry you in Houston still don't have an NFL team. All of a sudden that's different, So
that is personable. AI can't do that. They can't relate in that way.
No. And humans are starved for human relationship. I think the hardest thing in the pandemic was that we had to go into isolation. C.S. Lewis's mentor, Gordon MacDonald, said, hell is God's granting of our final wish to be left alone.
Wow.
We just don't want that. The first thing God curses in the Bible, before sin entered the world, he said, what's not good? It is not good for man to be left alone. And that's what hurts. So when AI starts to creep in and disrupt jobs, the people that will rise to the top and be valuable are the ones who can be superhuman, practicing soft skills. And that's why the push for me is to say, how can you become a better human through these 12 habits? Because either a computer's going to replace it and, follow me if you want to live, or it's going to be AI living alongside humans, and humans will be starved for. I think it changes what kind of pastor is going to be the most effective pastor. It's going to be a pastor that smells like the sheep.
That's
and
right.
not just, so you hit a nerve. Sorry. I get pretty excited about it.
Yeah. It's good. I think it'll be encouraging to people listening, especially in our audience, that I think there probably is some fear around that conversation. And I think put in perspective of, again, all the other technological advancements can be a little bit sobering and just a little bit like, calm the feathers. Let's just take a breath, and just recognize it is what it is. It looks a little bit different than it has in the past, but AI is just, again, another advancement, like you said.
Well,
so.
And I promised you a why behind the what. I was invited to speak at a gathering of several hundred faith-based entrepreneurs that were pitching their ideas, kind of like a Christian Shark Tank sort of thing, for lack of a better word. Super thoughtful group. I don't know how I got in, but they had a session on AI, and it's a hilarious title. They said, title of this breakout was, "What should we title this?" Because isn't that funny?
It's really good. Very crafty.
Yeah, pretty clever. So there were three panelists. There was one guy that had been in AI on his own for a long time, another guy that had been in defense work for AI, and a woman who's the chief of staff for Google, who's heading up all their AI initiatives. So pretty heady group. And it was basically, it was pretty cool. There were only 50 of us in the room. 49 of them that were in the room were some form of coder, right? And then there was me. And coders are asking all this like Python this and back end that, and I didn't even know what they were saying. It was like being back in Hebrew class in seminary, like whatever. And they all asked their questions. Then somebody said, "Hey, you haven't asked a question to me. What's your question?" And I said, "I have a high school senior. What should I tell them not to major in? Because there won't be a job there." They didn't want to answer that. They didn't like that question at all. But one of them finally spoke up and said, "I'll tell you what you should major in." Like, "Oh, cool." And everybody, because everybody's got a high school senior, liberal arts. Really?
That's shocking. Why'd they say that?
Well, you know who the people that are most concerned about AI taking human jobs is coders.
Oh, interesting.
It's going away fast. It can already code better than most coders.
Yeah.
So, like liberal arts is learning enough about the world to be able to have a conversation with anyone.
Huh.
My undergraduate degree at
fascinating.
Wake Forest is liberal arts, and that's the whole idea. Like, learn enough to be able to relate to anyone. It's going to be human relations that win the day in the coming job market. And that's what the 12 Habits of the Unicorns is all about.
Yeah. I meant to ask you that in some of the studies you found, like you mentioned earlier, some of the skills and the habits that you found had nothing to do with education. Like
nothing.
And so I was going to ask you, what do you think the implication is for people who are pursuing either higher levels of education or are considering like what area of education? In based on your findings, what do you think the posture should be when considering some of those things? If they can succeed so much as a unicorn in the workplace, and it has very little to do with education or background, how do you handle that thought process?
Yeah, well, that's a whole podcast series right there. It is, because you can go to like if you looked at the Outreach 100, I call it pastor porn, because
That's right.
Nobody wants to admit they read it, but they do.
Yep.
Even got a centerfold. Well, it does. It folds out. It's like, are you kidding me? If you had looked at the Outreach 100 25 years ago and said, okay, who's the head pastor of this and what seminary did they go to? You'd see, okay, this many went to this seminary. If you look at it today and ask the same question, like half the people on the list didn't go to seminary.
Right.
There's a move in general away from away from general higher education to trade schools. And some things, if you're a good plumber, AI is not going to take your job.
Right.
I mean, frankly, there are a lot of people, you can make a lot of money as a good electrician. And if you're tired of being a worship leader or aged out or whatever the situation is, there are some jobs that you could go to a trade school and learn. And it doesn't matter how good you are at the 12 habits. If you can't wire the thing up, you can't wire the thing up, right?
Exactly.
I do think, though, what the study taught me is habits trump pedigree.
Interesting.
Good habits trump pedigree. And it kind of reminded me, like, who were the 12 guys Jesus chose to change the world? He didn't go to Harvard to recruit,
Right.
So I'm all for education. I think that the kinds of education that will be valuable in the future are going to shift radically. And I think most people are smart enough to figure out what those shifts look like if they think it through. But in ministry, at the end of the day, it's all about people. Yeah. So these habits are essential to standing out in a time where things are going to shift pretty dramatically in the next decade.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, I have one kind of wrap up question for our audience of worship and tech leaders. You know, as you consider the 12 habits, you've kind of distilled the information that you've gathered from this research. What do you think are kind of the standouts for that particular group who might be listening or watching the channel when it comes to those habits? Like any particular ones that you think, man, for worship and tech leaders, these are the ones that I would really drill deep into to stand out.
Yeah. I'll tell you where this is just a rough guess. And what's going to be really cool, by the way, Luke, have me back on in 2 years. We've put about 10,000 people through the Vander Index, right?
Okay.
And it'll just keep growing geometrically. And sooner or later, we're going to be able to say, okay, for a campus worship pastor, you need to find somebody that's good in these four, and the bottom these four don't matter. So we can actually start to and if you want to, it's going to be super cool.
Excellent.
So right now you just get my gut. Okay. Yeah. My gut would tell me that your audience is probably way better than average at anticipation. Like when you watch a really well tuned, so to speak, worship team, and pastor walks out and just does this a little bit, and they're like, yep, we can go, or they can feel where the Spirit's leading, and they're a half step ahead of the congregation. I bet you guys would score super, super high on that. Okay.
Yeah.
So now, how honest do you want me to be?
Oh, be completely honest.
Okay. So let's look at first worship leader. Okay.
Yep.
What was the old Saturday Night Live? Who could it be?
That's a good reference.
Yeah, Satan. So what was his big flaw? It was a sense of pride. I'm going to be just like God. It was actually in my 1-year Bible reading in Isaiah, wherever it is, 14 or 15, where I'm going to be just like him, and was really, really good at what he did, but he lacked self-awareness. Now, right next to speed in least common traits, self-awareness is not something that comes naturally to us. And I think particularly, I know this has been true in my own learning, the more spotlight I had on me, the less self-aware I was. So when I was young and on a stage and preaching and on television and book deals and all that, I severely lacked self-awareness. So I'm betting the better a worship leader is at leading worship, the more they ought to pay attention to growing in self-awareness. Does that make sense?
Good. That's real good.
So, yeah.
That'll be gold and definitely worth, man, write that down, put it, get it on your notes, whatever you're taking notes with on this episode. It will be tremendously helpful to keep that in the forefront of your mind. That's very true. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
Okay. Sure. Where can people pick up your book? It's going to drop when we drop this episode, so we're going to drop it the same week. Everybody will have knowledge of that it's out. It's going to be published and available for purchase. So how can people find it? What are the resources available they should be paying attention to?
So two things. Next year there'll be a workbook coming out, so you can go through as a team and say, how do we get better at this? We'll have more data we can add to that. It's going to be cool. We felt a need to go ahead and get it out. So there's just a whole treasure trove of things that will be coming. And the best single hub for all that is theunicornbook.com. Okay, it's got all there you can see the Vander Index, you can see the book, you can see podcasts, you can see all theunicornbook.com. Now, here's the simpler way. Won't get you to all the one-stop shopping, but the only reason we named the company what we did is because the SEO guys came to me and said, your last name is so screwed up. You can misspell it into Google 100 ways and it will populate. So if you're looking for the book, you can go to Amazon, just try spelling Vanderbloemen, you'll find it. Go to Google, just try spelling Vanderbloemen, you'll find it. And if you go to vanderbloemen.com, I think there's something like 3,500 free resources there now on how to build and run and keep a great team. And most of it is church specific. So, that might be worth something for your listeners today. Just go raid our resources. Go for it.
Yeah. Dive in, guys. I mean, these guys have been doing the search and the placement, role in the life of the churches for so long. They're, nobody's a perfect expert, but the data and the lessons you guys have probably learned over the years of dealing with people are just invaluable. And so the resources that you guys put out are highly effective. I mean, they're very, very pertinent to the ministry, worker, the church employee. And so I would encourage everybody, we'll put links in the show notes. We'll put it in the description of the YouTube video as well, so people can check it out. And we look forward to the book launch. We're excited about it. I'm about halfway through right now of the different habits. And so I'm excited for people to get their hands on it. I think it'll be eye-opening for people, and also just a really simple, easy tool to put in their tool belt moving forward to become, again, stand out in the workplace. And really thankful you guys did the work to put it together. Thank you for that.
Thanks, man. We wanted to create something that was really simple, but would give great return on the investment of time. So I hope it helps a lot of your listeners. And if we can ever serve you guys, just let me know. Always 100%. Enjoy visiting with you guys.
Yeah. Thanks, William, for being on. It was a pleasure, and we hope to have you back here soon.
That'd be great. Thanks.